Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring all things wine with you. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lindsay, bringing you trending topics in the wine world. You can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the wonderful world of wine. Every week, Mark and I bring you new topics and various articles and bits of news that we find that are going on in our world of wine. And we love these conversations we have every week. And how are you today, Mark?
I am great, Kim. Always good to talk wine with you and our listeners.
No, I love these little get-together things we do once a week. It's wonderful.
Yeah, we get to babble about wine and all our geekiness, and hopefully people following along with us appreciate it, and we get them with some interest in the wine world.
Yeah, and I hope that you, our listener, is getting something out of this. And I'm sure that as you're listening to, whether you're listening to this as our radio show on Franklin Public Radio, or you hear this as our podcast, I'm sure you have questions that come up. And when you have those questions, we would really love it if you would go to our Facebook page, The Wonderful World of Wine on Facebook, and leave us those questions and comments, because we are certainly happy to address them on one of our shows and maybe even mention you by name. Ooh.
We love questions.
We love questions, and we love to talk about the things that people want to know about. And we always make that a point of our classes. And one of these days, we will get back to doing in-person classes again. Now, we want to meet you at your level. We want to teach you what you want to know and give you that really great base knowledge of wine. So send us your questions and your comments. And like I said, we would be happy to address them on the air. So the first article that we have today is a little sciencey and a little geeky, but I certainly love the science aspect of wine. And it's about antioxidants and antioxidants in wine. And this is something that we've been hearing for 25, 30 years maybe, about some of these health benefits that wine might have. And antioxidants are, this is definitely still a buzzword when it comes to health, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, it's always been the hot kind of thing in the wine world. I think we always joke around, Kim, that you can always find something that says wine is good for you, and you can always see stuff that wine is bad for you. Mm-hmm. And I think my doctor's on the side of, he never understands when I say I taste a lot. I never tell him I drink a lot. But it is a lot of good things in wine that are proven to be healthy for you. And that's what our friend here at Wine Folly was talking about in this article. A lot of good information, I thought, and a lot of big terms. I hope you're going to pronounce them to the listeners, Tim, because
I will.
Yeah, some of them were pretty long, technical, geeky things. And I know you're hitting up the chemistry world lately, so this should be right up your alley.
Some of these I'm going to have trouble with, but I'm going to do my best.
So the bottom line, she started out saying, like, it's good for us, but is this like the snake oil thing? Is it really? That's what I was kind of taking from it. Is it, is it the snake oil out there saying it's good, so drink it? But, always keep in mind, this is alcohol. So right. No matter what, alcohol is bad in certain ways, but there are good things within the wine that can help you health-wise.
Right. And I think that, especially when it comes to alcoholic beverages, like it comes to a lot of chemical compounds, because really at the end of the day, that's what wine is. It's full of chemical compounds, albeit natural chemical compounds. There's the dosage makes the poison is the phrase. So you could have just a little bit of alcohol every single day, and it could be good for you, or you could have way too much alcohol every single day, and it's very detrimental to your health. So I think that as Americans are very like one side or the other. We do things either not at all or to excess. And alcohol really has always historically in America fallen into that category of, there's really it's very difficult to find this middle ground of, okay, what is a healthy amount to drink? And there's very conflicting information, like you said, about, is it good for you? Is it bad for you? how much is good for you, how much is bad for you. And it does seem like every week we sort of get new studies, or, this study will say something and this study will say another something, and it's from all over the world. So if you are going to be a consumer of alcohol, which we assume that our listeners are because you're listening to a podcast about wine, be aware that too much is probably not very good for you. But there's also been studies that saying that having just a little bit is good for you. So of all of these things that are in wine that could potentially be good for your health, just remember that you have to balance that out with the amount of alcohol that your body is also consuming. So, don't make it too hard on your liver.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned there's a lot of compounds in wine, and you hear people talking about things that hurt them, and they're thinking it's really sulfur, and we always talked about it's not. There's a big talk about histamines and how those compounds can hurt you, and there's
Yeah, the
devices
histamines
out
seem
there
to
to
be like the
remove them.
new buzzword of why am I having a reaction to wine? And now the idea is, oh, it's the histamines in the wine. So just like maybe you're allergic to chamomile and you can't drink chamomile tea because it makes you, all puffy and, you're sneezing and whatever. Grapes are a fruit, and fruits have histamine, or they allow your body to create histamines, which respond to certain chemical compounds produced from those grapes. So yes, you may have a reaction to that wine that has nothing to do with alcohol and has nothing to do with sulfites, but it may have to do with just those other natural compounds that are causing a reaction within your body because they are a vegetative product.
Yeah, and all individuals will react different to all these different compounds, but this article was talking about the antioxidants, and which we always think of the good side that's in the wine. And they say there's research out there, they prevent stress that can cause aging, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, dementia. I mean, every like you said, Kim, every week you're seeing something. They're doing this article in England this week, it's about your heart, and this week it's about this and that. You can always find something out there.
Yeah,
But
it's so true.
and the antioxidants are a big thing, but I never realized how many different forms of antioxidants there are within red wine.
Right. And reds are generally what we're talking about when we're talking about wines having these
The most
antioxidant
benefits.
protective, these benefits. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What I really liked about this article was I enjoy this sciencey nature of this article because, like you said, I'm taking a little basic chemistry class just so that I can understand some of the concepts behind winemaking and like, oh, what's the benefit? Why do we use sulfur? Like, what's the benefit of sulfur? Like that kind of a thing. So the fact that this actually went into some pretty significant detail about how antioxidants are beneficial in our bodies, I really appreciated that because I'm like, oh, I learned something like this last week in my chemistry class. So if you are interested in kind of understanding the science of it, we really do suggest that you go look at this actual article. So if you go to Wine Folly and look up, even just do a search for wine antioxidants, it's going to help you a lot. But it's that there are, at the base of it, antioxidants protect against oxidative stress. And oxygen, we need it to live, but it also degrades living things. So that's why when you cut an apple and you expose the inside part to oxygen, it starts to brown. That's why a banana browns. It's why when you leave a white wine open for a week on your counter, it's going to start turning brown. And it kind of does similar things inside our bodies. We don't turn brown, but it is one of the reasons why we age and why, our systems start to function less well as we get older. So it's these oxidative stresses. And this article was really kind of getting to the bottom of when molecules sort of start to fall apart because of the oxidative stress on them. And they create these things called free radicals. They're looking to fill these empty spaces and these little broken parts that they have of them. So they fill their own spaces by scavenging off of other bits from your cells. And so if they're taking little bits from, say, your blood cells or your whatever other cells in your body, that is causing damage to your healthy cells. And these antioxidants protect against that. So they are like filling the gaps that these oxidative, they call them reactive oxygen species, these imbalanced molecules. So antioxidants kind of fill those gaps so that you don't have the damage to your cells that you ordinarily have. And like you were saying, red wines, they have a lot of these, and there are a lot of different ones. It's not just, often we think of maybe there's one or two good things in grape skins or grape seeds, but this article really went into detail about how many different types of compounds are beneficial in red grapes.
Yeah, and the only one I ever knew was resveratrol.
Right. That's the one we hear about a lot.
Everybody hears that, but like you said, there were other ones. I think, wasn't there the French paradox thing years ago that brought to light resveratrol?
Yeah, that kicked it all. That kicked off this whole like wine with a meal, especially red wine, is a healthy beverage kick in the US. And it was in like 91 or 92. So it was like they're almost 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was a piece on 60 Minutes, and they were talking
60
about
minutes.
it was 60
Time
Minutes.
magazine.
Yep. No, it was 60 Minutes, and it was a piece about how is it that French people can eat all this butter and all this animal fat and
wine,
smoke cigarettes all the time and drink all of this wine and yet have lower incidence of heart disease, heart attacks, strokes, all of these issues that we in America have here. So the premise of this was, what if it's the wine? What if the wine is providing some sort of protective measure? And it sent red wine sales like to new heights for American consumers. And I don't think there was anything that really met that type of enthusiasm for wine until we had Sideways, the movie, come out, 15, 20 years ago. And then everyone's like, blah, Pinot Noir, must buy it. So yeah, it was really like a game changer for American wine drinking, especially red wine.
I remember researching how much, what volume you needed to consume for it to be healthy. So you're talking a huge quantity of resveratrol that you would need in your diet. When they did these tests on lab animals or rats or whatever, they really put like 100 times more than you would actually consume. So it's huge volume, but it is in small percentages in the wine. And like you said, Kim, a lot of it comes from the tannin parts of the wine, the grape skins, the seeds, that gives it these compounds into the wine.
So I know that like the scientific studies and the experiments they've done on animals has been like, okay, you would need to drink the equivalent of, I don't know, 50 bottles a day or whatever to get the resveratrol.
We call that Kim amount of wine.
Hey now. I might drink a lot, but I don't drink that much.
Yeah, it's a lot of wine.
It's a lot. It's a lot of wine. It's like, no, your body would not be able to survive that. But I wonder how much of it is really small doses consistently all the time. Like say I have a glass of red wine literally every single day. Yeah. And the reason why I think that there might be something to that is because as I was looking through this list of these different types of tannins, because most of the beneficial compounds are found in the tannins. So it's mostly in red wines and not in white wines because the tannins come from the skin of the grapes. These are also the same exact compounds that are found in tea. And we've sort of always been told that drinking tea, black tea or green tea or white tea, real tea, is also very beneficial. And they think that that's, one of the reasons why folks in Japan have such, so much longer lifespans and healthier lives than some of us in other countries outside of Japan. And I'm wondering if it's this small doses all the time, as opposed to like, we'll take a pill that is, however many IUs of resveratrol in a pill form, as opposed to just the natural version of it, but little bits fairly consistently. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm not a scientist. I'm a wine teacher.
And and it's interesting, isn't it, Kim, that when we teach about tannins, we use tea as an example all the time. Yeah. Right. I mean, so it's so interesting how that.
And I drink a lot of tea. So, maybe that those things go hand in hand. It's like maybe that's why I like red wine and why I like tea, because they hit my palate in similar ways. Like I like those textures, and so it's all very pleasant to me. And maybe I'm getting all the good things out of it too.
Now, they did mention, Kim, that the whites do have antioxidant. White wines do have antioxidants, and some came from acids that are in the wine, but some white grapes do have a colored skin, so they do put a little tannin into the wine. So there are some that are touching the skins a lot longer than others. So you can find these in white wine, but like we said, with red, you would have to drink, triple the amount of white to get the ingredients out of it. So,
right.
But they are in whites.
Do
you want to mention some of these other things other than resveratrol?
Yeah. So
you want to just say them? So there were like 4 other things.
Resveratrol is the one that we sort of hear of the most, but there are also compounds called quercetins, and then the rest of these compounds that are also considered to be tannins. There are catechins and epicatechins, and then the big long word, let's see if I can get this right, proanthocyanidins.
That sounded great.
Thank you.
I knew you'd do a good job.
This is the other one this is the one that's the main one in tea, I believe. And so these all are kind of, part and parcel to, well, what is it that we get that are these beneficial compounds from fruits and vegetables and these dark skinned things? Like we're always hearing about these superfruits, right? So, I mean, blueberries and acai berries and pomegranate and all these like really darkly colored, sometimes tannic kinds of fruits that have all of these similar compounds. So they kind of, all go together. And whether you believe in the idea of a superfruit or not, all of these fruits that have skins that have these bright colors, and it's kind of it's common knowledge that these things are really good for you. This is why these things are really good for you, because they have these compounds in their skins that act as these antioxidants that protect our bodies against the degradation that time and the environment and other bad things that we do to them.
And earlier, Kim, you mentioned Pinot Noir as the grape, but when we're talking tannins, you would look for a heavier wine like a Syrah or a Cab or a Merlot, something that's heavier, which has a thicker skin. So technically, it should have more of these antioxidants from the skins. Correct?
You would think so, but I think that there has been research that says that it's not just how tannic is the wine. Like there have been studies that have been showing that different types of grapes grown in different regions will show varying levels of these things. So I think it's definitely like an ongoing kind of study. But I think Pinot Noir usually comes out on top as far as one of the healthier types of wines to be drinking, which seems kind of counterintuitive because it's a lighter red, and you can see through it
with histamines. I read that
with Pinot.
Yeah,
that doesn't surprise me.
Histamines are lower, so
yeah,
because it's good. Lighter. I mean, it's all covered, so we like that.
That's right.
All red wines.
So again, like we always try to say, in moderation.
Yeah,
drink in moderation.
It's alcohol, but we feel it's good for you.
That's right.
You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. If you'd like more information about Kim, please go to her website at vinitaswineworks.com. If you'd like more information about myself, please go to franklinliquors.com. And for any questions or comments on our show, please go to our Facebook page, The Wonderful World of Wine. Next, Kim, we'd like to talk to our listeners about an interesting article. It was almost like a history of where did sommelier come from? How did this word start? This was something I was very interested in, Kim, because I had always researched way back what was, a servant was called that was to do with wine. And they started out first in this article about defining sommelier. How did it start, basically, was what they started with, right, Kim?
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually a 14th century French word that was a servant in charge of transporting the lord's baggage and wine. And was also responsible for tasting of that wine.
Right. So it was a certain type of body servant who, would be responsible for the Lord's stuff and they had to have a certain amount of knowledge of wines in order to choose decent wines for the Lord to drink, but then also tasting them and testing them to make sure that nobody was trying to poison the Lord.
Yeah, I was just going to say, now everyone's thinking, wow, what a great job. But no, no, no,
But it's
no.
like, oh,
Really,
no, no, you might die.
yeah,
Like, yeah.
someone's always trying to kill the Lord. So someone had to step up and, but then again, if that person was the one always getting the wine, they probably knew that it was safe. So they were drinking probably some good wine and a lot of it before they were serving it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a bad gig, honestly.
No,
But I know that in my time of being a wine professional, and any time that I would tell someone what I did for a living, and I'm like, oh, I'm in wine, the very next question I would get is, oh, are you a sommelier?
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like, ugh. That's the term that everybody knows. So
yeah.
over the years, I've kind of like, I need to wrap my arms around the acceptance of this term because no, I'm not. But it's actually a very hazy term
Yeah,
for
it's been
people.
trending a lot lately too about what is actually going on with that
Yeah.
being used.
So, like so many things, there are certain terms that you can get a certification in that thing, and then you can be called that thing. Or if you just do that job, then you are that thing. And you had recommended a book to me a couple of months ago, Mark, Wine Girl.
Yes.
By Victoria James, who is a well established sommelier in New York City. She was the youngest certified sommelier in the country when she was only 21 years old. And there's a part of her book where one of her mentors tells her that it's not the certifications that you have. You know, you could have an advanced sommelier certification and pin, but if you don't do that as your job, then you don't deserve to call yourself a sommelier. And then she had another colleague who told her the exact opposite. And he's like, I've been doing this for 20 years. You know, I run the wine program in this restaurant. Yes, I get to call myself a sommelier because it's what I do every single day professionally. And it doesn't matter that I don't have any of the professional certifications. I'm still a sommelier.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this word gets very hazy because on the one hand, it is a word that lay people understand as this is a wine professional. If someone calls themselves a sommelier, I can be certain that this person knows a heck of a lot about wine. But then there are also people who are like, well, if you don't do it in your day-to-day job or you don't have a professional certification in it, then you don't deserve to call yourself that. So, you know, it's different than being a doctor. Like you can't call yourself a doctor unless you are a doctor. You can't call yourself a lawyer unless you've passed the bar. But this is a term that's a little more tricky.
I love the whole history of looking at this, the wine servant type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I ever told you the story, Kim, about I was looking for a Twitter handle way back when I started getting on Twitter, and I searched the history of wine servants. Have you ever heard the term cupbearer?
Only when it comes to Greek mythology.
See, I'm doing
So no.
So a cupbearer was dated back to like 196 BC, was actually a position, it was in very high rank, again, in the royal court. And once again, their duty was to get drinks and prepare drinks for the royal table. And they actually had a seat at the table. They were ranked up as they were royal. And the term was called cupbearer. And I wanted to call my wine education site cupbearer, but obviously the handle was taken. Someone else had the idea. And then I changed it to wine education. So that's what our show uses, at wine education. So everyone knows I'm putting that plug in there. But there's only a few select like cupbearers that were in existence. So the original sommelier, they drank wine and they knew things, Kim. And once again, they had to be aware of the chance of someone was going to kill the royal court, so there could be poison. And it was also mentioned in the Bible, but it was called at that time, the Hebrew word was butler. So the history of the so-called sommelier goes way back. There was always someone who knew wine and called themselves something.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a history,
This is great.
a big history.
Yeah, a long history. Well, I mean, humans have been drinking wine and wine type beverages all over the world for a very, very long time. So it makes sense that there have always been people who specialize in it. And we're just the latest ones, aren't we?
Yeah, and the
In a long
certification
line.
thing with the Master of Wine, which was a UK thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think what they say started back in the 60s. So
This was actually information that I did not know that I appreciated from this article. Is that so? When you're talking about like these really high echelons of wine certifications, like the tippity top, you can't go any higher. The two top most certifications that you can get in our industry are the Master of Wine, the MW, and the Master Sommelier, the MS. And the Master of Wine comes from an organization that is based in London. My old boss at Legal Seafoods is one of the two Masters of Wine in Massachusetts, and it was first awarded in 1953. So a fairly long time ago now, but still, relatively recent. It's not like it goes back to the 1800s or anything. So 1953, and the study, if you're going to be a Master of Wine, is a little bit more academic. So people who are MWs tend to do a lot of research. They tend to be a lot of writers, critics, wine makers,
there's only what, 1,000, less than 1,000
Yeah, it's like
in the
800
world.
something
Yeah.
MWs in the entire world. But then there's the MSs, the Master Sommeliers, which I actually think that I don't even know how many MSs there are in the world, but that is a US based organization, the Court of Master Sommeliers, and they are more focused on service. So those folks may not end up, they probably started their careers in a restaurant doing restaurant wine service, maybe being a wine director somewhere, but definitely the service aspect of pouring wine, pairing it with food, knowing the appropriate presentation of a bottle of wine, mostly in a restaurant setting. And then those people go on to do other things within the industry, but tend to be more focused on service. And that first exam was given in the late 60s, like 1969. So I didn't even realize that it was as young of a certification as it is.
And that people can relate. We always talk about the series SOM, right? I mean, if you want to see that whole process, how they take the service part of the exam and all that. So
yeah, and it's very intense, and there's a lot of overlap between the two. Like blind tasting is a big thing, knowing, memorizing a lot of things about regions and grape varieties and soil types, and a lot of this stuff that isn't necessarily useful on a day-to-day basis, but for wine geeky folks like ourselves, we really thrive on that knowledge because we really, I know that you're the same as me, Mark, where you really just, even if we're not going to use that information all the time, we really like to have it because it really informs a lot of the other things that we can talk about that we can make applicable to people's wine choices on a day-to-day basis. So it's a lot of, there's a lot of learning that could go into it. But kind of to get back to our initial, initial conversation about this, yes, there are these official designations, but it's very interesting how this term of sommelier or wine steward has kind of changed over time. And, those of us that are in the industry, yes, maybe we're not technically a certified sommelier, but I kind of still consider you to be a wine steward. You're leading people through their purchasing and trying to find them a wine that's going to be tasty for them. So you kind of do the same function as that wine steward, hopefully without the poison.
Yeah. I'll taste for you. I'll bite the bullet and taste for everybody.
That's right. We taste through all these wines for everyone.
Yeah.
But
it's a tough
hopefully
job,
we won't get poisoned.
Someone has to do it.
Thank you for listening to us today on The Wonderful World of Wine. We've been your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lindsay. Please leave us comments and questions on our Facebook page, The Wonderful World of Wine, and we'd be happy to address them in an upcoming show. You can find past episodes of our show on SoundCloud and iTunes, and we will visit again with you next week. Cheers. Wine, wine.